with that, we're going to talk about OTAs. We're going to unveil this week our first of our list, our top 10 list going into the next NFL season. Now we're in June, top 10 quarterbacks in the league. Talk a little bit about the NBA Finals tonight as well. So we will go over all that tonight. But let's start with the top 20 Baltimore Ravens of all time. Okay? So before we kind of did last year, in the even last few weeks, we kind of did a top 5 list like that of all positions. So now doesn't matter what the position is, doesn't matter where they played, when they played, whatever. In the history of the Baltimore Ravens since '96, who are the top 20 of all time ever of the list. So I expect a lot of discourse, obviously, when you have a list like this, but I'm pretty confident in that nobody's ever going to disagree on social media because whoever does that, right? So let's go ahead and go over the top 20 of Ravens of all time. Top number 20, Big Sam Adams. I think like this was when you look at the Ravens in the 2000 season, which I think is probably the best season in Ravens history. Obviously the season they won the Super Bowl. Definitely when you look at the success of the Ravens, an underrated guy was Sam Adams. Sam Adams coming over as a free agent, big clogging guy to clog the middle. Like there were certain guys, especially of that era, where you really wanted to stop the run. And Sam Adams was a free agent that the Ravens were able to get. He made such a difference for that, especially for a young guy named Ray Lewis, who was there along with this guy, R.I.P., the late Tony Siragusa. I don't know of a more fun guy he had than Siragusa, the Goose, as well. You know, I my old girlfriends never got his name right, like Goosenberg and Goose and all, but they knew because we knew the Goose. On the field, despite the fact that he was acting on The Sopranos, despite the fact that he was on Fox Sports, despite the fact that he was really one of the real characters of the game, he was an outstanding D tackle. He really was. Definitely running on Sam Adams and Tony Siragusa, especially in the 2000 season, it just didn't happen, right? You just scratched that out. That's probably the best run defense. I think one of them, if not the best one in the history of the NFL, could not run the ball. No such thing as running the ball on Sam Adams and Siragusa. He's not higher. They're not higher because they had a relatively short tenure, despite the dominant nature. I think Siragusa, he had like 3 or 4 years. I think Adams like 9 years. So that's why they're higher. But I tell you what, you can't not rewrite the history of the Ravens. I definitely have them in the top 2019. Jimmy Smith, number 18. Jimmy Smith, I think, is probably one of the greatest talents in the history of Ravens. I actually didn't love the pick when we picked it, but he was a top cornerback out of Colorado, had some issues off the field, which is why he got drafted so low. I got nothing but respect for Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith was as good as he wanted to be a lot of times. I think had it not been for the health issues, we'd absolutely be talking about a guy who made the Hall of Fame. We'd absolutely be talking about a guy. I definitely think he's one of the top Ravens of all time. And I think he was very pivotal in the pre-Marlon Humphrey era of the Ravens, as far as that goes. Now, like you see a lot of good corners that the Ravens have. Not so much when Jimmy Smith was playing, really, when he was in his prime. They really needed a good projection out of Jimmy Smith. So really good corner physical as well. So I have Jimmy Smith at 18. Michael McCrary. To this day, man, when I see a guy, when they talk about motor and moving, like on the end, when they talk about motor, Michael McCrary is the name. He never stopped moving. Michael McCrary's energy on the field was incredible. You know, a lot of people forget when they signed Michael McCrary, a lot of fans thought, a lot of, I don't know about fans, but a lot of media thought, man, maybe you're overpaying for this guy. Like, he had one really first 3 years in the league, kind of pedestrian. The last year before his free agent year, he was really good, had a lot of sacks. Wasn't a ton of interest in him. and the Ravens go ahead and sign him to a lot of money, and boy, they feel like it's a bargain. McCrary was unblockable. What they didn't have in the years before he got there was that boom pass rush they had. They had Peter Boulware, but on the line, you had Adam Saragusa and Ian McCrary on the end as the rusher. He's almost overshadowed how good the great run defense is, but he was the great pass rush. He was terrific in the years he was a Raven. Speaking of pass rush, Peter Boulware. Again, man, I kind of put him in the category of Smith. His injury kind of is going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, but Peter Boulware, some guys too, like it's always guys too. I always like guys in any sport when they step in and they're so powerful and they're so good on their from the get go, and that's what Peter Boulware was. Peter Boulware, I think, was an outstanding outside linebacker as well. They basically had a 3-4 defense. Brian Billick changed it probably after. I remember the Ravens had a 4-3 defense when they won the Super Bowl in 2000. And then when they had their roster purge in 01, they changed it from a 3-4, from a 4-3 to a 3-4. And I think the biggest reason was Peter Boulware. Because Peter Boulware, what he was able to accomplish, his speed, his power on the outside, he was the answer basically that Billick gave was, I want some of my best guys on the field doing his strengths. So we were kind of building around Peter Boulware and Ray Lewis at that time. He was outstanding. Peter Boulware. This is the best receiver yards in Ravens history. Like, some people don't realize that, but D Mace, I thought this was a guy. This is a typical Raven free agent signing. Here's a guy played a lot of years in Tennessee, played against the Ravens because one kind of was a rival, kind of what we're seeing this year with Patrick Queen. But he turned out to be one of the best Ravens receiver all time as far as yardage. Not a lot of receivers on this list, but I'm gonna put Mace there. I thought like the years he was there, really consistent. Even though I think he was a little bit past his prime, but he was a chain mover, outstanding. So Mace 15. I'm gonna put Ray Rice here. If you've been watching this, you know I don't like him. Seriously, I don't. I find it disgusting what this guy did. However, he's on the list. To be fair, he is the second best running back of all time in Ravens history. I don't think it's close. I don't think there's any question about it. I think if you look at from just the player, I think Ray Rice deserves to be here. But I kind of debated leaving him out, but I'm not going to leave him out. I mean, on the field, top 20. I mean, I think there's no question about it. Chris McAllister, number 13. I think this is the top cornerback, one of the top cornerbacks I think we ever had. I think McAllister, was terrific. His whole career, a bit underrated. I think the secondary was a bit underrated. Kind of like, again, it's kind of unlike the modern NFL. You talk about those Ravens teams around the 2000. You talk about the inside. You talk about Saragusa and Adams, Ray Lewis, James, like guys like that. Rod Wilson on the inside. They had good corner play. McAllister was one of the best corners in the league at the time. Definitely, I think he's the best cornerback still I think we've had. I think he makes the list here as well. Here's a current Raven, Mark Andrews. I think it's only a matter of time before he takes the number one spot as far as the greatest tight end in Ravens history. I don't think there's any question about it. You look at the combination of him and Lamar Jackson, what he's been able to accomplish. He's an excellent receiver tight end. I don't think there's any question about it. Hands, power. He's not just a receiver, too. I mean, he's a blocker as well. Blocks big time. I think he really got slept on as a prospect. I really think outstanding stuff from Mark Andrews. I think it's only a matter of time. If he's able to stay healthy, he was injured last year, but I think definitely he can take over as the number one receiver of all time. Not quite yet ahead of Todd Heap, who has the most receiving yards of any tight end in receiving in Ravens history. Heap. That's what they used to yell. Excuse me. In Camden Yards downtown, whenever Heap caught the football. Heap, I thought, was very, 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 very solid as a receiver. I think he could stretch the field as well. He was really, really quick. As he got older, too, he became more savvy as well. Had a lot of his brains. Good long career for Tom. I think probably what's probably not kept him out of the Hall of Fame, honestly, is the lack of quarterback play that we had then. We had Anthony Wrights, Kyle Bowler, etc. I think he had better quarterback play. I think definitely his numbers could have been higher. I did the video a couple weeks ago. I think this is the greatest kicker in NFL history. Justin Tucker, highest percentage, over 90%. Only kicker in NFL history over 90%. How could you put a kicker this high? Because it's Justin Tucker. Longest field goal of all time in NFL history. I don't think there's a such thing. I mean, Tucker is on another planet. You wouldn't put a kicker on this list. I don't think anybody's going to argue that Tuck should be there. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. What a weapon it is that you have. A lot of teams struggle with kicking in the league. We never really have. Stover didn't make the list, but Stover for him was really good as well. So outstanding from Justin Tucker. I think I absolutely have Tucker in the top 10. I think he's the greatest kicker of all time on any team. Marshall Yanda, number 9. He should go to the Hall of Fame. You never know with guards sometimes. RIP, speaking of guards, to the late Ray Allen. We just talked about Ray Allen as far as the greatest, I think, greatest guard in NFL history. Shout out to Marshall Yanda, who I think should go to the Hall of Fame for years. Yanda was good at tackle as well. Played tackle for a year when they didn't have anybody as well. Kicked him back in the guard. Yanda, I mean, he would just – you don't see 5 yards down the field. He's just shoving. God, Yanda was super dominant as a right guard. I think Yanda definitely is in the top 10. Let's go back here. Number 8, Jamal Lewis, best rusher in the NFL in the Ravens history. I think most rushing yards in Ravens history. I'm still perplexed about why Jerome Bettis gets so much more love than him. I don't really see a difference between him and Jerome Bettis as far as that goes. You look at the yards, Bettis had a few more yards than him, but not a lot. I mean, I don't know why we can't put Jamal in the Hall of Fame. I really don't. I think Jamal, big, fast as well. So fast. Only flaw he ever had in his game, he did fumble a lot. I think he got away with a lot of fumble. He didn't it was weird. He would fumble, but he would always get the ball back, or then not a lot of fumbles for loss, but more than what you'd like to see. But man, he was such a tremendous back. He was such a tremendous back in his prime. Now, going the right way now. Joe Flacco. I think Flacco, I think I'm not sure if he gets in the Hall of Fame. Here's the thing, he's still playing. I think he has a couple more years like he did. I think he's back in that conversation. He's playing with the Colts this year. So I think, but I don't think there's such a player. He might be one of the most beloved in Ravens history. I don't think anybody, people love Joe Flacco, and they should. All business, went to work, has a phenomenal deep ball. Phenomenal. I mean, he could throw it as well as anybody in the league. Even now, I mean, tremendous deep ball. He actually was struggling more with the intermediate stuff. You could actually take that away. But you're not taking away the deep ball from Joe Flacco. I think he was phenomenal. Haloti Ngata. Is he getting in the Hall of Fame? I think Ngata, even with Sam Adams and Saragusa, this guy was unblockable in his prime. I definitely think on any other defense except for the ones he was on here, some of the great defensive players he had, Ray Lewis and all that, etc. I think Haloti Ngata is phenomenal. I think he should. He's another one. I like Yanda. I'm not sure he's going to get in the Hall of Fame, but I definitely think he should get all the consideration considering he was. I'm surprised I don't think he actually won Defensive Player of the Year, but he should have. Here's a guy who definitely did. Sizzle! Get the ball. Sizzle! Get the ball. Terrell Suggs. I think Suggs, was the man-child here. It's funny. He dropped in the draft because he had a slow 40 time, or else he probably never would have became a Raven. Like Eric DeCosta was ecstatic that he ran a slow 40 time because that dropped him. Like everybody had him in the top 5 when he got drafted. I think it was 04 and I think it was 04, 03. He got drafted, and because of that, I think he slipped. Something weird happened in the draft league. Minnesota missed the pick. Ravens were able to jump on it. It was fantastic. Fantastic career. Suggs, I think, was the best pass rusher in the Ravens history. No question about it. For sure, he's getting in the Hall of Fame. It's not already there, but outstanding. Ed Reed, talked about him last week with defense. I think he's the second best safety, I think, in NFL history. I think Reed is the best ball hawk there ever was in football. I don't think anybody had a nose for the football and had a better way of getting to the football than Reed. Not only did he take the ball away, he took it the other way and scored as good as anybody I ever saw. Not just even as a young player, as an older one, he studied film incessantly, despite all of his physical ability. That was incredible. Leader of the team, he was the Robin, the leader on the team, the former defensive player of the year. I think Ed Reed, number 4. Number 3. Some maybe didn't think he'd be this high, but I think like when you win the MVP 2 consecutive times, well, 2 different times, I definitely think Lamar is right there. I think he's certainly probably the second biggest star we've ever had with the Ravens. Certainly the modern day star of the team. Lamar, 2 MVPs speak for themselves. I think he was the only thing that's missing for him is playoff success. Can he get it done and go into that high spot higher than this with playoff success? He's won a couple games, went to the AFC Championship last year. Can he take the team all the way through? That's the standard that's been set by some of these great players. Number 2, John Ogden. I think is goated, outstanding. I had him number 2 all time as offensive tackles that ever played. Jonathan Ogden was a man all by himself, no question about it. It's funny he ever played guard. A lot of people forgot that his first year, Tony Jones, when they drafted him over from Cleveland, Tony Jones was considered one of the top tackles in the league, so they had to move Ogden at guard, and he was dominant there. So he actually did play a year at guard, but Ogden was beyond what was just ridiculous. No help he ever needed, ever. There was no such thing as helping Jonathan Ogden. And who else but the great Ray Lewis statue in front of the stadium? Man, he would just destroy people on the field. All there is to it. It was so to watch automatic 13, 14, 15 tackles automatically if he had a game where it was 4 or 5 tackles, that almost never happened. He almost automatically, most of his career, 13, 14, 15 tackles in a game. Not only tackles, but tackles. We even judge the tackles, even with that amount, like were they close to the line of scrimmage or far from the line of scrimmage, sideline to sideline. Ultimate linebacker, ultimate leader compared to Ray Lewis. I think the greatest Raven of all time. There you go. No surprise, right? Number 1, the man's got a statue in front of the stadium. I think it's some suggestion. I think Lamar is pretty high. Mark Andrews is pretty high, and you got Tucker. I think is right there as well. And